The old community center on Maple Street had seen better days. The paint on the walls was chipping. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees and the wooden floors creaked with every step. But none of that mattered to the people who came here. For many in this neighborhood, it was the only place they could afford to practice their dreams. Judge Raymond Wells didn't care much for dreams anymore. At 72 years old, he'd seen enough of life to know that dreams were just pretty lies people told themselves. He'd retired from the courthouse 5 years ago, but retirement hadn't suited him. The silence of his empty house was too loud, the memories too painful. So he'd started volunteering here, managing the building's schedule with the same iron grip he'd once used in his courtroom. Every evening at 6 o'clock sharp, Raymond would arrive at the community center. He'd check every room, make sure every light switch was in its proper position, and ensure that everyone followed the rules. The rules were simple. You signed up for your time slot, you showed up on time, and you left when your time was up. No exceptions. No sob stories. No excuses. The piano sat in the main hall like a patient old friend. It wasn't a fancy instrument. The black paint was worn in places, showing the wood underneath. Some of the keys stuck if you didn't press them just right. But it was tuned every month, and for the kids in this neighborhood who couldn't afford their own pianos, it might as well have been a Steinway. Raymond had a special attachment to that piano, though he'd never admit it out loud. His late wife had played it sometimes back when she volunteered at the center as a music teacher. She'd sit there for hours, teaching children how to read notes and find melodies in the chaos of black and white keys. That was before the cancer, before the hospital visits, before everything fell apart. Now, 3 years after her death, Raymond protected that piano like a guard dog. He made sure no one abused it, no one played it outside their scheduled time, and no one took it for granted. Structure, order, rules. These things kept the world from falling into chaos. These things kept him from thinking too much about what he'd lost. It was a Thursday evening in late October when everything changed. The autumn air had that crisp quality that made you want to wrap yourself in a warm sweater and drink hot chocolate. Raymond was doing his usual rounds, clipboard in hand, checking off names as people came and went. The dance group had finished at 5:30. The book club was wrapping up in the back room. And the piano was scheduled for a high school student from 6 to 7. 6 o'clock came and went. No student. Raymond nodded to himself with grim satisfaction. Another flaky teenager who didn't respect other people's time. He'd give them until 6:15, and then he'd mark them as a no-show. 3 no-shows and you lost your privileges. Rules were rules. At 6:20, the front door burst open. A girl rushed in, slightly out of breath, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She was still wearing a coffee-stained apron from what looked like a cafe uniform. Her black hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she clutched a folder of sheet music against her chest like it was made of gold. "I'm here for the piano," she gasped, already heading toward the main hall. "I'm sorry I'm late. The bus broke down and I had to run from—" "Time slot ended at 6, Raymond said, his voice flat and cold. He didn't move from his position by the door. "You're 20 minutes late." The girl stopped, her eyes wide. She couldn't have been more than 17, maybe 18. There was something familiar about her face, but Raymond couldn't place it. Not that it mattered. "Please," she said, and Raymond heard the desperation in her voice. "I have an audition tomorrow morning. This is my only chance to practice. The piano at school is being fixed, and we don't have one at home. I worked a double shift today to pay for my application fees, and the bus just—" Raymond held up his hand. He'd heard it all before. Everyone had a story. Everyone had an excuse. If he made an exception for one person, he'd have to make exceptions for everyone. And then what was the point of having rules at all? "The next group needs this space at 7, he said. "That gives the piano 30 minutes to rest between sessions. It's in the schedule." The piano didn't need to rest. They both knew that. But the rule existed to create buffer time, to maintain order, to keep everything running smoothly. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. Raymond saw her jaw tighten, saw the way her hands clenched around her sheet music. She was trying so hard to keep it together, and something about that determination tugged at a place in his chest he'd thought was dead. "I've been saving for 3 years," she said quietly. "This scholarship audition is my only shot at college. My parents work 2 jobs each, and we still can't afford tuition. If I don't get this scholarship, I'll have to give up music and get a full-time job instead. This is everything to me. Raymond felt that familiar hardness settle over him like armor. He'd learned to build walls around his heart after his wife died. Sympathy was dangerous. Empathy led to pain. Better to stick to the rules, to the structure, to the things that couldn't hurt you. I'm sorry, he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. But the schedule is the schedule. You should have planned better. The girl stood there for a moment, staring at him like she was trying to understand how someone could be so cold. Raymond stared back, unmoved. He'd faced down hardened criminals in his courtroom without flinching. A teenager's disappointment wasn't going to crack him. Then something changed in her expression. The tears dried up. Her shoulders straightened. She walked past him toward the main hall, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. I said no, Raymond called after her, following her into the hall. The time slot is over. You need to leave. But the girl was already at the piano, setting down her sheet music with shaking hands. She pulled out the bench and sat down, her fingers hovering over the keys. There was something different about her now. Not defiance exactly, but a kind of desperate courage. The courage of someone who had nothing left to lose. Don't make me call security, Raymond said, though there was no security to call. He was the security. The girl's fingers touched the keys, and then she began to play. Raymond opened his mouth to shout at her, to demand that she stop immediately. But the sound that came from the piano froze the words in his throat. It wasn't the piece he'd expected. It wasn't some generic classical composition that every student learned. It was something else entirely. The melody was soft at first, like the first leaves falling in autumn. Each note carried weight, held meaning, spoke of things that couldn't be put into words. It was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once, full of longing and hope and bittersweet joy. Raymond felt his legs weaken. His clipboard slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. That melody, he knew that melody, it was impossible. It couldn't be, but there was no mistaking it. The girl was playing his wife's song. Raymond's hand reached out for the wall, searching for something solid to hold on to. The world had tilted sideways and nothing made sense anymore. The melody continued. Each note a knife cutting through the armor he'd built around his heart over the past 3 years. The girl kept playing, completely unaware of the storm she'd unleashed inside him. Her eyes were closed now, her body swaying gently with the music. She played with feeling, with soul, with a kind of depth that couldn't be taught. This wasn't just someone hitting the right keys at the right time. This was someone who understood what the music meant. Raymond managed to find a folding chair against the wall. He sank into it, his whole body trembling. The melody wrapped around him like a ghost, bringing with it a flood of memories he'd been trying so hard to keep buried. His wife had written this piece 30 years ago during their honeymoon. They'd rented a small cabin up in the mountains, and she'd woken up early one morning to watch the sunrise. When Raymond had finally crawled out of bed, he'd found her sitting at the cabin's old upright piano, composing something new. Her fingers had danced across the keys while golden autumn leaves drifted past the window. "What are you working on?" he'd asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "A promise," she'd said, smiling up at him. "A promise that even when things change and seasons pass, some things remain beautiful." She'd called it Autumn's Promise. It became their song, the melody that defined their marriage. She'd play it on their anniversary, on quiet Sunday mornings, on days when the world felt too heavy. But she'd never shared it with the world. It was too personal, too much a part of their story together. She'd written it down only once in her own hand, and kept the manuscript in a special folder with other precious things. After she died, Raymond had locked that folder away in his study. He couldn't bear to look at it, couldn't stand to hear that melody in his head. It reminded him of everything he'd lost, everything he'd never get back. He'd actually been relieved that no one else knew the piece. It meant he'd never have to hear it played in public, never have to relive those memories, but now this girl was playing it. In this shabby community center, on this worn-out piano, and she was playing it perfectly. The melody reached its gentle crescendo, the part where his wife's hands used to lift off the keys like birds taking flight, before settling back down for the soft, melancholy ending. The girl played it exactly right, with the same tenderness, the same understanding. When the final note faded into silence, Raymond realized his face was wet. He hadn't cried since the funeral. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. Tears were weakness, and he couldn't afford to be weak. But sitting in that cold community center listening to his wife's music brought back to life, he couldn't stop the tears from coming. The girl opened her eyes. She sat very still for a moment, her hands resting on the keys, as if she was reluctant to break the spell the music had created. Then she seemed to remember where she was. She turned around on the bench, probably expecting to see Raymond standing there ready to throw her out. Instead, she found him sitting in the folding chair, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. The girl jumped up from the piano bench, her eyes wide with alarm. "Oh my God, sir. Are you okay?" She rushed toward him, then stopped a few feet away, unsure whether she should get closer. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have just started playing. I didn't mean to upset you. Please don't have a heart attack or something." Raymond tried to pull himself together. He wiped his face with his sleeve, took a deep breath, and looked up at her. For the first time in 3 years, he let someone see him cry. He was too shocked to care about maintaining his stern facade anymore. "Where did you learn that piece?" His voice came out rough, barely above a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Where did you learn that song?" The girl clutched her sheet music folder to her chest, confusion written all over her face. She clearly had no idea what was happening or why this grumpy old man was suddenly falling apart in front of her. Mrs. Wells taught it to me," she said carefully, watching him like she was afraid he might collapse. "She was my piano teacher. A long time ago, when I was little." Raymond felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Catherine Wells?" The girl nodded, a small smile breaking through her confusion. "Yes, she was the best teacher I ever had. This was back when I was 7 years old. We lived closer to the center back then before my dad's job moved and we had to relocate across town." Raymond stared at her, really looked at her for the first time. The familiar features suddenly clicked into place. Those determined eyes, the way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating, the stubborn set of her jaw when she was trying not to cry. "You're little Lily," he said slowly. "Lily Chen. Catherine used to talk about you all the time." Now it was the girl's turn to look shocked. You knew Mrs. Wells?" A sound escaped Raymond's throat, something between a laugh and a sob. "She was my wife." Lily's hands flew to her mouth. The sheet music folder slipped from her grip and papers scattered across the floor. Neither of them moved to pick them up. "Your wife?" Lily whispered. "Mrs. Wells was your wife? But I never met her husband. She just talked about him sometimes. She called him Ray." "That's me," Raymond said. "I'm Ray. Or I was before I decided Raymond sounded more professional." He gestured vaguely at himself. "Before I became this." Lily slowly sat down on the floor, right where she was standing, as if her legs had given out. The scattered sheet music lay around her like fallen leaves. She picked up one page with shaking hands. "She gave me this," Lily said, holding up the paper. It was old, yellowed at the edges, covered in handwritten notes. "When we moved away and I had to stop taking lessons, she gave me this piece. She said it was special. She made me promise I'd keep practicing, even if I couldn't afford a teacher anymore." Raymond leaned forward to look at the page. He recognized his wife's handwriting immediately, the elegant curves of her musical notation, the little notes she'd written in the margins. "For Lily," it said at the top. "Play this when you need to remember that beauty exists in the world." "She told me the same thing," Lily continued, tears streaming down her face now. "She said music was the language of feelings we couldn't put into words. She said I had a gift and that I should never let anyone make me believe I wasn't good enough." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I never forgot that. Even when things got hard, even when we couldn't afford lessons anymore, I kept practicing. I taught myself from library books and free online videos, because she believed in me." Raymond felt something crack open inside his chest. For 3 years he'd been walking around like a zombie, just going through the motions of living. He'd convinced himself that his wife was gone and everything she'd cared about had died with her. He'd become cold and rigid because he thought that was the only way to survive the grief. But here was Lily, living proof that his wife's kindness and passion hadn't died. She'd planted seeds in this young girl's heart, and those seeds had kept growing even after she was gone. "She talked about you too," Raymond said quietly. After her lessons, she'd come home glowing. She'd say, "Ray, I taught a little girl today who really gets it. She doesn't just play the notes. She feels them." "She was so proud of you." Lily covered her face with both hands and sobbed. Raymond stood up from his chair, his legs still shaky, and walked over to where she sat on the floor. He lowered himself down next to her, his old knees protesting, and for the first time in 3 years, he let himself sit in his grief instead of running from it. They sat there together on the cold floor of the community center, surrounded by scattered sheet music, two people connected by a woman who'd understood that love and music were the only things that really mattered. They sat there for what felt like hours but was probably only a few minutes. The fluorescent lights hummed above them, and somewhere in the building a door closed. The world kept moving, but in this moment, time seemed to stand still for Raymond and Lily. Finally, Raymond took a deep breath and pushed himself up from the floor. His knees cracked in protest, reminding him he wasn't as young as he used to be. He offered his hand to Lily, and she took it, letting him help her up. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "I've gotten mascara all over my face, haven't I?" Raymond almost smiled, almost. "You look fine. Listen, about your audition tomorrow." Lily's eyes went wide. She'd completely forgotten why she'd come here in the first place. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was already 6:45. She'd lost almost half an hour, and she still hadn't practiced the piece she was supposed to perform. "I should go," she said quickly, bending down to gather her scattered sheet music. "I've taken up enough of your time, and I know you have rules about the schedule. I'll figure something out. Maybe I can practice at home on my keyboard. It's not the same, but what time is your audition?" Raymond interrupted her rambling. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. At the Performing Arts Center downtown. Raymond checked his watch, then looked at the piano. Something was shifting inside him like ice beginning to thaw after a long winter. He'd spent 3 years building walls, creating distance, hiding behind rules and schedules. But standing here with Lily, seeing the same passion for music that his wife had tried to nurture in this girl, he realized something. Catherine wouldn't want him to turn Lily away. She'd be ashamed of what he'd become. "Play," he said simply. Lily looked confused. "What?" "Your audition piece, play it. Practice as long as you need to. But the schedule. Forget the schedule." The words felt strange coming out of his mouth. He'd spent 3 years living and dying by that schedule. The next group can wait. Or they can use a different room. "I don't care." He gestured toward the piano. "You need to practice, so practice." Lily hesitated, searching his face for any sign that this was a trick or that he might change his mind. But Raymond's expression had softened. He wasn't the same cold man who'd tried to throw her out 20 minutes ago. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Catherine would haunt me for the rest of my life if I let you leave without practicing." This time, Raymond did smile. It felt rusty and uncomfortable, like using muscles he'd forgotten he had. "Trust me, you don't want to face the ghost of an angry piano teacher." Lily laughed, a sound mixed with relief and lingering tears. She gathered her sheet music and walked back to the piano. But before she sat down, she turned to face him. "Will you stay?" she asked. "I mean, you don't have to. I just thought, maybe you could listen." Mrs. Wells used to say that playing for someone made it more real. That music was meant to be shared, not locked away. Raymond felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. He nodded and took his seat in the folding chair. "I'll stay." Lily sat at the piano and arranged her sheet music on the stand. She took a moment to center herself, rolling her shoulders and shaking out her hands. Then she began to play. The piece was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was a common choice for auditions, but as Lily played, Raymond understood why Catherine had seen something special in this girl. She didn't just play the notes correctly, she understood them. Her fingers moved with confidence and grace, drawing emotion from the keys that went beyond technical skill. Raymond closed his eyes and listened. Really listened. For the first time in 3 years, he let himself remember what it felt like to sit and enjoy music, to let it wash over him without fear or pain. Catherine used to play for him like this, filling their home with melodies that made the ordinary feel magical. When Lily finished the Chopin, Raymond opened his eyes. "That was beautiful," he said. "But you're rushing the middle section. You're nervous and it shows." Lily nodded, biting her lip. "I know, I always do that. Mrs. Wells used to tell me the same thing. She'd say I needed to trust the music and not race toward the end." "Play it again," Raymond said. "But this time, when you get to that section, I want you to pretend you're playing for Catherine, not for a panel of judges who are deciding your future. Just for her. Play the way you played when you were 7 years old and nothing mattered except making beautiful sounds. Lily took a deep breath and started again. This time, when she reached the middle section, she slowed down. The notes breathed. They had space and time to resonate. Raymond could see her physically relax, her shoulders dropping, her face softening. When she finished, she looked at him with hope and fear mixed together in her eyes. Better? Much better, Raymond said. And then, surprising himself, he stood up and walked to the piano.
May I?
Lily slid over on the bench, making room for him. Raymond sat down, his fingers hovering over the keys. He hadn't played in years. He'd avoided this piano like it carried a curse. But now, sitting here with Lily, he felt drawn to it. His fingers found the keys and began to play Catherine's piece. Autumn's Promise. The melody came back to him easier than he expected, like his hands remembered even though his heart had tried to forget. He played it slowly, deliberately, putting into the music all the love and grief and regret he'd been carrying around. Lily watched him play, tears streaming down her face again. When he finished, she said quietly, "She loved you so much. I could tell even when I was little. The way she talked about you, the way her whole face would light up. I used to wish I'd find someone who loved me like that someday." Raymond's throat felt tight. "She was the best thing that ever happened to me. When she died, I thought the best part of my life died with her. I stopped believing in beauty and joy and all the things she tried to teach through her music. But it's still here," Lily said, touching the piano keys gently. "The beauty didn't die. She left it behind in people like me, in everyone she taught, in this piece that she gave me." Raymond looked at this young woman sitting beside him, and he saw Catherine's legacy living and breathing. His wife hadn't just taught piano. She'd planted seeds of hope and beauty in people's hearts, trusting that those seeds would grow long after she was gone. "You're going to do great tomorrow," Raymond said, "not because you're technically perfect, but because you understand what Catherine tried to teach you. You play with heart." "I'm terrified," Lily admitted. "This scholarship is everything. If I don't get it, I'll have to work full-time and give up on music school. My parents need help with bills, and I can't ask them to sacrifice more for my dreams." Raymond understood that fear. He'd seen it in countless young people over the years, kids who had talent and passion but lacked opportunity. He'd become numb to it, told himself it wasn't his problem. But sitting here now, he realized he'd been wrong about a lot of things. "Play it one more time," he said. "And then I want to teach you something Catherine taught me. A trick for handling nerves." Lily played through the piece again, and this time it was even better. The notes flowed naturally, confidently. When she finished, Raymond told her about the breathing technique Catherine had used before performances. He shared stories about the times he'd watched his wife play, about how she'd transformed nerves into energy. They worked together for another hour, with Raymond offering suggestions and encouragement. He found himself sharing memories of Catherine that he'd kept locked away, and each memory felt like releasing a prisoner that had been held captive too long. When they finally stopped, it was almost 8 o'clock. The community center would close soon. Lily packed up her sheet music carefully, treating the old handwritten pages like treasure. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for letting me practice, for the help, for telling me about Mrs. Wells. It means more than you know." Raymond stood and walked with her toward the door. At the entrance, he stopped. "Lily, wait." She turned back. "Would you do me a favor?" he asked. "After your audition tomorrow, win or lose, would you come back here and tell me how it went?" Lily's face broke into a genuine smile. "I'd like that. I'd like that a lot." After she left, Raymond stood alone in the empty community center. The silence didn't feel quite as heavy as it usually did. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than grief and anger. He felt hope. Raymond didn't sleep well that night. He kept thinking about Lily, wondering if she was getting any rest before her audition. He remembered how Catherine used to pace around their house the night before important performances, too nervous to sit still, too worried to sleep. He'd make her chamomile tea and tell her stories until she finally relaxed enough to close her eyes. At 7 in the morning, he found himself standing in his study, staring at the locked drawer where he'd hidden Catherine's things. His hand trembled as he pulled out the key he kept on his key ring. The drawer hadn't been opened in 3 years. He'd been too afraid of what he might feel. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was Catherine's favorite silk scarf. the blue one with silver threads that she'd worn to every recital. Beneath it was a small jewelry box containing her wedding ring and a delicate silver necklace she'd loved. Raymond picked up the necklace, letting it pool in his palm. Catherine had worn it every day of their marriage. After she died, he'd kept it locked away because seeing it on their dresser hurt too much. He checked his watch. 8:15. Lily's audition was at 10. He made a decision. 20 minutes later, Raymond was driving his old sedan toward the Performing Arts Center downtown. He hadn't been to this building in years, not since Catherine had performed here with her students at their annual recital. The place held too many memories. But today, those memories didn't feel like weights dragging him down. They felt like old friends he'd forgotten to visit. The Performing Arts Center was buzzing with nervous energy when he arrived. Teenagers and their parents filled the lobby, everyone clutching sheet music and water bottles. Kids hummed scales under their breath. Parents gave last-minute pep talks. The air practically vibrated with anxiety and hope. Raymond scanned the crowd, looking for Lily. He found her sitting alone on a bench near the back, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was wearing a simple black dress and looked terrified. Her leg bounced up and down, and she kept taking deep breaths like she was trying to calm herself. "Lily," Raymond called softly. She looked up, and her eyes went wide with surprise. "Mr. Wells, what are you doing here? I thought you might need this." He held out the silver necklace. It was Catherine's. She wore it to every performance. She said it reminded her that she wasn't alone, that I was always with her even when I couldn't be in the room. Lily stared at the necklace like he just handed her the crown jewels. "I can't take this. It's too precious." "It was hers. She'd want you to have it." Raymond sat down beside her on the bench. "At least for today, for luck. You can give it back to me later if you want." Lily's hands shook as she took the necklace. Raymond helped her fasten it around her neck. The silver caught the light, and for a moment, Raymond could almost see Catherine standing there instead, giving him that confident smile she'd always worn before walking on stage. "I'm so scared," Lily whispered. "There are kids here who've had private lessons their whole lives, who own grand pianos and have performed at Carnegie Hall. I'm just a girl from a working-class neighborhood who learned from YouTube videos and library books." Raymond turned to face her fully. "You want to know what Catherine used to tell me? She said the best musicians aren't the ones who can play the most notes or hit the hardest passages perfectly. The best musicians are the ones who can make you feel something. Technical skill is impressive, but it's forgettable. Emotion stays with people. What if I mess up? Then you mess up. But you know what? You'll still be that girl who walked into a community center yesterday and played my wife's song with more soul than some professionals could manage in a lifetime. You'll still be the person Catherine believed in enough to give her most precious composition. That doesn't change, scholarship or no scholarship." A voice came over the intercom. "Lily Chen, please report to practice room B for your audition." Lily stood up, her whole body tense. Raymond stood with her and put a hand on her shoulder. "Remember what we practiced, breathe, trust the music, and play for Catherine, not for them." She nodded, blinking back tears. Then impulsively, she hugged him. Raymond stiffened for a moment, surprised, then relaxed and hugged her back. It was the first real hug he'd had in 3 years. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Then she was gone, disappearing through the double doors that led to the audition rooms. Raymond stood there for a moment, feeling oddly empty. He wanted to follow her, to make sure she was okay, but he couldn't. This was her moment. All he could do was wait. He found a seat in the lobby where he could see the doors she'd gone through. Parents around him chatted nervously, checking their phones, trying to distract themselves. Raymond just sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap, silently willing Lily to do well. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. Raymond had no idea how long these auditions were supposed to take. Each minute felt like an hour. He thought about all the times he'd waited for Catherine like this, sitting in audiences while she performed, his heart swelling with pride at her talent. Finally, the double doors opened and students started trickling out. Some looked elated. Others looked devastated. Raymond scanned each face, searching for Lily. When she emerged, her expression was unreadable. She walked slowly, clutching her sheet music folder. Raymond stood up, trying to read her face to figure out how it had gone. But she kept her head down, not making eye contact with anyone. Then she looked up and saw him, and her face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. She ran toward him, not caring that people were staring, and grabbed his hands. "I did it," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I actually did it. I played the whole thing without freezing up. I didn't rush the middle section. And when I finished, one of the judges asked me where I'd learned to play with such feeling. What did you tell them?" I told them the truth. That the best teacher I ever had taught me that music wasn't about perfection, it was about connection. About sharing something real with the people listening. Lily's eyes shone with tears. One of the judges, this older woman, she smiled at me. She said that's exactly the kind of musician they're looking for. Raymond felt his own eyes getting wet. "Catherine would be so proud of you." "I'm proud of me too," Lily said, and there was wonder in her voice. "I've spent so long being scared, doubting myself, thinking I wasn't good enough. But in that room, playing for those judges, I finally felt like maybe I do belong. Maybe I am good enough." They stood there in the busy lobby, two people who'd been brought together by grief and music and the memory of a woman who'd believed in both of them. Around them, life continued. Parents congratulated their kids or offered comfort. Students made plans or vented their frustrations. But in that moment, Raymond and Lily were in their own bubble. "When will you find out?" Raymond asked. "They said they'd post results online in 2 weeks." Lily touched the necklace at her throat. 2 very long weeks. "Well, whatever happens, you should be proud. You faced your fear and did the thing that terrified you. That takes real courage." Lily looked at him thoughtfully. "You know what Mrs. Wells used to tell me? She said courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the thing anyway, even when your hands are shaking and your heart is pounding." "She told me the same thing," Raymond said quietly. "On our wedding day, actually. I was terrified of messing up my vows, and she squeezed my hand and said those exact words. She was really wise, wasn't she? She was the wisest person I ever met." Raymond paused, then made a decision. "Lily, I want you to keep the necklace. Not just for today. Keep it. I couldn't, please. Catherine gave you her music. I want to give you this. She'd want someone who loved music as much as she did to have it. Someone who reminds me that the things we love don't die. They just change form and live on in different ways." Lily's hand went to the necklace again. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." They walked out of the Performing Arts Center together into the bright morning sunshine. The world felt different somehow. Lighter. Raymond had arrived at this building carrying 3 years of grief and regret. But walking out, with Lily chattering excitedly beside him about the audition, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt alive again. "Can I buy you breakfast?" Raymond asked. "There's a diner around the corner. Catherine and I used to go there after her performances." Lily grinned. "I'd love that. But only if you promise to tell me more stories about her. I want to know everything." "Deal," Raymond said, and for the first time in 3 years he meant it when he smiled. The 2 weeks that followed felt both endless and too short. Lily came to the community center almost every day, sometimes to practice, but mostly just to talk. She'd tell Raymond about her day at school, about her worries for the future, about her dreams of becoming a music teacher like Catherine had been, and Raymond listened. Really listened. Not with the impatient tolerance he'd shown people for the past 3 years, but with genuine interest. He found himself looking forward to her visits, checking the clock around the time she usually arrived, feeling disappointed on the days when she couldn't make it because of work or school. He also started making changes at the community center. The rigid schedule remained, but he began adding flexibility for students who had genuine conflicts. He started a list of kids who wanted to use the piano but couldn't afford private lessons. And he began talking to the center's director about starting a scholarship fund in Catherine's name. "You're different," the director told him one afternoon. "I don't know what happened, but it's like someone flipped a switch." The old Raymond would never have suggested we stay open an extra hour for students. Raymond just smiled. He didn't know how to explain that a 17-year-old girl with his wife's sheet music had cracked open his heart and let the light back in. On the 13th day, Lily burst through the community center doors. Her phone clutched in her hand, her face pale. Raymond was in the main hall adjusting the piano bench, and he looked up in alarm. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately fearing the worst. "The results are up," Lily said, her voice shaking. "They posted them an hour early. I got the email notification, but I can't open it." "I'm too scared." Raymond walked over to her. "Do you want me to look first?" She nodded, handing him the phone with trembling hands. Raymond took it, feeling the weight of this moment. This wasn't just about a scholarship. This was about Lily's future, her dreams, everything she'd been working toward. He tapped the email, waited for it to load, and read the first line. His face must have given something away because Lily grabbed his arm. What does it say? Just tell me. Did I get it? Raymond looked up at her and he couldn't stop the smile spreading across his face. Dear Miss Chen, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as one of this year's scholarship recipients. For a moment, Lily just stood there, frozen. Then the words sank in. I got it? Her voice was barely a whisper. I actually got it? You got it, Raymond confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. Lily let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. Raymond pulled her into a hug and she clung to him, crying tears of relief and joy and disbelief. I can't believe it, she kept saying. I can't believe I actually did it. I can, Raymond said. Catherine knew you had it in you 10 years ago. I knew it the moment you played her song. They stood there for a long time, two people celebrating a victory that meant so much more than just money for tuition. This was proof that hard work mattered, that talent could shine through even without expensive lessons and fancy instruments, that dreams weren't just for people who could afford them. When Lily finally pulled away, wiping her eyes, she was grinning so hard her face must have hurt. I have to call my parents. They're at work, but they'll want to know. Oh my God, my mom is going to cry. She's been so worried about how we'd afford college. Go call them, Raymond said. I'll be here. Lily ran outside to make her calls and Raymond sat down at the piano. He ran his fingers over the keys, thinking about everything that had happened in the past 2 weeks. How one moment of connection had changed everything. How letting someone past his walls had given him a reason to care about life again. He began to play Autumn's Promise, Catherine's song. But this time it didn't make him sad. This time it felt like a celebration, a promise kept. His wife had believed in beauty and music and the power of human connection. She'd planted seeds of hope in a 7-year-old girl, trusting that someday those seeds would bloom. And they had. Lily came back inside 20 minutes later, her eyes red but her smile still bright. My mom started crying just like I said she would. My dad had to take the phone because she couldn't talk. They're so happy. They want to meet you, actually. They want to thank you for helping me. I didn't do anything special, Raymond said. Yes, you did. You gave me confidence when I was falling apart. You shared memories of Mrs. Wells that reminded me why I love music. You came to my audition when you didn't have to. And you gave me this. She touched the necklace at her throat. You did a lot. Raymond felt warmth spread through his chest. Your teacher did the real work. I just showed up at the right time. That's what she used to say too. That showing up was half the battle. Lily sat down on the piano bench next to him. Can I ask you something? Of course. What are you going to do now? I'll be going to college in a few months. I won't be coming here every day anymore. Will you be okay? The question caught Raymond off guard. Would he be okay? A month ago, the answer would have been that he was fine, that he didn't need anyone, that he preferred being alone. But now he realized that wasn't true. He'd just been surviving, not living. There was a difference. I'll be okay, he said slowly. Better than okay, actually. You've reminded me that there's still good in the world. Still beauty and hope and things worth caring about. I think it's time I stopped hiding behind rules and schedules and started actually living again. Mrs. Wells would like that, Lily said softly. Yeah, she would. Raymond stood up from the bench. Actually, I've been thinking about something. That scholarship fund I mentioned to the director? I want to make it happen. A real fund in Catherine's name for kids like you. Kids who have the talent and the passion, but not the money. Lily's eyes lit up. That's a wonderful idea, and I want you to help me with it. When you're home from college, you understand what these kids are going through. You can help identify the ones who really need it. I'd love that, Lily said. I'd really love that. Over the next few weeks, they worked together on the scholarship fund. Raymond reached out to his old contacts from his law career, people with money who might be interested in supporting young musicians. Lily helped write the mission statement, describing what Catherine had meant to her and why music education mattered. The community center agreed to partner with them, offering the space and the piano for free lessons. Local music teachers volunteered their time. Slowly, piece by piece, they built something real, something that would outlast both of them. On what would have been Catherine's 70th birthday, They held a small ceremony at the community center to announce the scholarship fund officially. About 50 people showed up, including former students of Catherine's, fellow teachers, and community members who'd been touched by her kindness over the years. Raymond stood at the front of the room, more nervous than he'd been in years. Public speaking as a judge had been easy, but this was different. This was personal. My wife believed that music could change lives, he began. She believed that every child deserved the chance to find their voice, regardless of their family's income. She spent her career trying to make that belief a reality, one student at a time. He looked at Lily, standing in the front row wearing Catherine's necklace. A few weeks ago, I'd forgotten what Catherine taught me. I'd become bitter and closed off, hiding from the world. Then a young woman walked into this building and played a song that reminded me what matters. She reminded me that the people we love never really leave us. They live on in the lives they touched, in the lessons they taught, in the beauty they brought into the world. Raymond's voice cracked, but he pushed forward. So today, we're launching the Catherine Wells Music Scholarship Fund. It will provide free lessons and financial support for talented students who might otherwise never get the chance to pursue their dreams. Because that's what Catherine would have wanted. That's what she spent her life doing. The room erupted in applause. People came up to shake Raymond's hand, to share their own memories of Catherine, to offer donations and support. And through it all, Raymond felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. He felt proud. Not of himself, but of the life Catherine had lived, of the legacy she'd left behind, of the fact that her kindness was still rippling outward, touching new lives, creating new possibilities. That evening, after everyone had left, Raymond and Lily sat together at the piano one last time. The building was quiet, the autumn sun casting long shadows through the windows. "Thank you," Raymond said, "for everything, for reminding me how to be human again." "Thank you for letting me in," Lily replied, "for trusting me with your wife's memory, for believing in me." She placed her hands on the keys and began to play Autumn's Promise. Raymond closed his eyes and listened, and for the first time the melody didn't bring pain. It brought peace. A promise that even after loss, even after grief, beauty could still exist in the world. And as the final notes faded into silence, Raymond realized something important. Catherine had been right all along. Love didn't end when someone died. It just transformed, finding new ways to express itself, new people to touch, new lives to change. The song had ended, but the music played on.